topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning, listeners. It's Tuesday, and excited to be here with you. So it's just beautiful. And what I want to share with you is that we have a fabulous guest today. And I'll be talking about the kindness circle somewhere in the middle of our conversation. And so be on the lookout for that. And also, I want to thank each and every one of you who have got our books, Expert to Influencer, Entrepreneur's Garden, and many others that I've written and co-authored. So really, really appreciate you. For those of you who are still waiting in the wings, please get the books, and I can guarantee you, you will get nuggets. Not only that, but the profits help us out to help entrepreneurs all across the globe through kiva.org. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Fantastic. And good to have you. So tell us, do you recall a moment or a person from your youth or childhood who left a positive mark on you?
Oh, gosh. I mean, the people that come to my mind are my mom and dad. You probably get that answer a lot, but I can definitely say, there are other teachers and influences I've had in my life, but my mother and father, who are still alive, they're in their 80s and they're doing great. So I still have, many conversations with them throughout the week. It's kind of funny because a lot of my business development and my entrepreneurship comes from my father, and my mother will say, "Oh, I see so much of your father in you." And then when I talk to my dad, I have a very big creative side, and that comes from my mother. And he'll say, "Oh, I see so much of your mother in you." So they see each other in me. And I definitely, when I reflect on my own background and skills and superpowers, I can definitely connect it to them.
So as you were growing up, what dreams did you have? What did you want to become?
Well, I can definitely say it was different than what I'm doing, and what I'm doing is perfect. So I just share that because I know a lot of times people may grow up with a certain vision that might not actually even be something that they want. It might even be something that they believe they have to pursue because of what they've been told or how they've been raised. And for myself, I envisioned when I was younger, I would go to college, I would get a good job, I would get married, I would have a family, and I would work in a job for somebody else, probably for my whole life. And that is definitely not what I'm doing. I did that for a while. I went to college, I went to grad school. I did work in both clinical healthcare and then corporate healthcare for about 20 years. And then I went to a yoga class in 1999, and it changed my whole perspective on what I was supposed to be doing in the world. And while there's a lot that happened after that yoga class in 1999, what I do now and the life I have now, I'm an entrepreneur. I run my own business. I support people all over the world with my teaching methodologies. And I'm grateful for the path I've taken. And at the same time, I would never go back to that other life. It's in my memory, but it definitely doesn't look anything like the life I lead now.
Got it. So kind of let's revisit your time during clinical and the corporate healthcare. So while you were working, what would you say were some of the highlights of your career that you enjoyed?
Well, I've always been deeply interested in medicine and the body and movement and anatomy and all of the sciences. I was always very interested in that. And I originally thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. So when I went to undergraduate at Boston University, I live in Boston, that's what I studied. And along the way, I decided, I don't think I want to just work with people's limbs. I think I want to work with the whole person. And so my initial clinical experiences were working in hospitals and rehabilitation centers as a social worker, a rehab counselor, a discharge planner. And I loved that. I really thought that was my path, helping people who were injured or ill, helping them reach a higher potential. And I ended up getting recruited to work on the business side of healthcare, and I was really good at it. I was very organized. I could present well. I could sell stuff. I understood software. So I worked my way up the corporate ladder in a consulting firm, and I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed managing a team. I enjoyed helping, businesses reach their goals. I enjoyed the presentation side of things. The one thing that was missing, though, is I didn't always feel aligned with the goal of the company. And that was something that I really aspired to, but I didn't quite know did I just need to switch a job? What was my path to find that alignment?
So this is a tough question. It's a what if question. What if you knew what you're doing right now? Do you think you would have left the corporate life earlier than when you left?
I don't know. I mean, I probably would have. I don't know if that's the answer you expected, but I probably would have. The spark that really lit the flame was going to a yoga class. I had never gone to a yoga class before. And because of my medical background, my clinical experiences, my experiences on the business side of healthcare, when I went to take a yoga class, it was this perfect blend of all these different things I had done. But for that class, I probably didn't even, this was 1999 when yoga was not as popular as it is in the United States. And I really had just experiences in the gym. And so when I saw this person teaching this yoga class, and I saw it was this whole blend of movement and psychology and empowerment and confidence building, I thought, this is what I want to do. And honestly, if I had been exposed to that earlier, I probably would have left earlier.
So that is a very insightful statement. There's so many clients who kind of come to me as I do leadership and executive coaching. They will say that they want compensation. And a lot of millennials and Gen Zs are quite a bit of self-starters. They want compensation and they want meaning as well, because they're very much aligned. Like, I've got everything. I've risen to the ladder. I'm in the management, but I'm finding that something is lacking. What would you tell those millennials and Gen Zs how to blend the two?
Yeah. Well, I can approach it from the practical day to day, and I can approach it from sort of the spiritual or heart-centered approach. Let's start with the spiritual or heart-centered approach. I think it's important for people to identify what their vision is for their life, and that's usually connected to their values. And it's difficult sometimes to feel connected to a company's mission if you don't actually know yourself. What's important to you? What are things that you value? And in those values, that helps define who you are. The other piece of that, though, is spending time to think about, what kind of impact do I want to have in the world? And a lot of times we get caught up in the day-to-day and we lose sight of, kind of the Stephen Covey begin with the end in mind kind of mindset. So that's one part. The other thing I think about, especially for the kind of person you're describing, is there, when you do that work and you identify maybe some difference between what you're doing now and what you want to do, is there a way that you can start to feed that part of you while you're working your full-time job, to start to experiment with feeding that part of you that wants something different, rather than thinking, I need to completely quit the lifestyle I'm in and completely shift to this other lifestyle? There's a lot to be said from a practical standpoint, but even from a spiritual, heart-centered standpoint, to experimenting on the side with something else and keep the full-time gig going. Yeah, I can't hear what you're saying.
That's definitely very powerful, because what happens is, I've seen a lot of my clients kind of just get caught in the moment of passion and purpose. That's what they think. And when they go, and when the reality hits, it's a hard and a bitter pill to swallow. So starting something on the side and experimenting with it makes so much easier to explore and not have that pressure. Because if you just jump all in, nothing wrong with jumping in. I mean, there's no right or wrong. People can go whatever works for you, as long as you mentioned, right, you're aligned with your values and you're willing to do what it takes. If you make an informed decision, it takes the pressure off, because now you're so aligned with your why that the what and how don't matter. So
yeah, I was just going to add one little piece too. It sparked from what you said. A lot of times people have this vision of what they think they want to do, and until they experiment with it on the side, they don't realize, what, this isn't quite it. So that's just another advantage to trying something out, rather than ripping the Band-Aid off and going to test out, is this really a good fit for me?
Absolutely. Because recently, I have to share the story about this young gentleman. He did very well financially, at a very secure place. And now he doesn't have the freedom to do what he wants to do, because he's in the leadership position and you got to account for the finances and all that. And then he decided to go to a startup. But now he's used to making decisions, right? And in the startup, he was being driven by somebody else. And he's like,
Yeah.
gosh, what did I end up doing? And that's exactly going back to the point that you shared, is you're not going to know. The grass is always green on the other side. So experimentation is so powerful. Now, what would you tell people when they have these doubts, whether they're in the right job, whether they're in the right path in their lives?
Well, what I found in working with people, I work with, my primary area of expertise is training yoga teachers in a very specific way. The focus is helping them build their confidence. And that's a blend of skill-based methodology and mindset. And this sort of thing comes up a lot in the context of that. What I've found in working with people, and this even harkens back to when I worked as a social worker and a rehab counselor, is the beliefs that we have about ourselves often drive the doubts we have. And oftentimes the beliefs we have about ourselves aren't necessarily something that we created. It's something that was born out of maybe a negative experience we had or something we were told. And so in a way, there's sort of a reclaiming of your power that becomes possible when you conquer a self-doubt. It takes, though, self-inquiry and introspection, and really, I find working with someone, because when anyone has self-doubt, it's sort of this cycle of thinking and acting and being that is hard to break unless you have someone else, not even giving advice or sharing perspective. It's not that. It's about someone else asking you questions about how you're viewing yourself in the world. And without that outside voice, it can be very difficult to break the cycle. It's almost like on a neuroscience level, there's like this sort of loop, this neural pathway that's just ingrained in your brain. And that's why for myself and my own personal growth, I've had the biggest advances or breakthroughs when I've worked with a coach, because it's someone else to ask me questions about how I'm operating in the world.
Well, that is so true. And you're absolutely right on that, because that's the first thing. Like when I took my first coaching class, Angela, my teacher, first class, and she said that, listen, just because you're going to become a coach doesn't mean that you don't need growth, that you don't need guidance. Like you have blind spots today, you'll have blind spots 30 years down the road.
Yeah.
And so I took that to heart. And even today, I've got my own coaches who'll set me straight. So it's not just important to have somebody who's going to question you, but it's also about somebody challenging you. Because as you mentioned with the brain, right? Like we get so caught up in the comfort zone that we don't want to knock on the door of discomfort. And brain loves to avoid the pain. So I want to talk about 6-part framework for building confidence. Do share.
Yes. So over the years, when I've been working with, again, it's primarily yoga teachers in my program, I've found that there are different patterns of thinking, different common belief structures that people have. And most of the people I work with are women, and most of them are, I would say, between the ages of maybe 35 and 65. So just to kind of give you an age and kind of an avatar of sorts. And the interesting thing is a lot of the challenges that they face really aren't necessarily just about teaching yoga. It's something about teaching yoga that brings out these limiting beliefs. So earlier this year, I sat down and I thought, there's a common thread here that I'm finding in working with people that really transcends the yoga teaching and really is more, as you're saying, a confidence framework of sorts. So I started to create, and here's what I came up with. If the idea is to move through your life feeling more confident, what I've found is there's a number of different practices that you can integrate into your life to begin to build and boost your confidence. And I call it a practice because it really is a practice, because every day we might have something that triggers us into feeling less than or feeling like we can't do something. So it really is just like a yoga practice. It's a confidence practice that we're practicing every day to be the kind of person who fill in the blank. So the first part is having some sort of daily yoga or movement practice. And I'm not going to say it has to be yoga. It could be anything. It could be going for a walk every day. There's so much, and I can go into it, but we probably don't have time. There's so much from the perspective of what happens in the body on an endocrine level, a cardiovascular level. So many different systems of the body benefit from daily exercise, and that affects our mood. So if I want to be the kind of person who is more confident, I must have some sort of daily movement practice, not only to affect my inner biology, but also to affect my perception of myself, which is part of how I feel. So yoga or daily movement is one. Number two is experimenting and giving yourself daily challenges. This has to do with what you're saying before, these doubts, bumping up against these doubts. So let's say you're the kind of person who never thinks you could go to a movie by yourself or go out to dinner by yourself, but there's a brand new movie and you can't find anybody to go with you. And you say to yourself, you know what? I'm going to go to this movie by myself. And I don't care that it's something I don't typically do. That's an experiment. And in experimenting, we bump up against these beliefs and we challenge them in real life with real experimentation and see what the outcome is. It's not to say we have to have it be a great experience, but just in the act of doing it, we start to chip away and dismantle those beliefs. Number three is self-inquiry, being the kind of person who's curious. All of what we're talking about when you were mentioning before, kind of these neural pathways and the brain likes comfort, that's the sort of thing, especially if you want to feel more confident, that can hold you back. So having a sense of self-inquiry where you're naturally curious about what would be possible if I fill in the blank. Number four is meditation. And I know people are going to hear this and say, I can't meditate. My brain's too busy. So if the word triggers you.
That's very true. As we kind of continue the conversation, I want to kind of take a stop there and ask you. You said that meditation, I can do it. And I hear that from so many different people. You said like experimentation and self-inquiry. What would you guide them? What would you tell them? Even if it is like 5 minutes or some tricks of the trade that would help our audience.
Yeah. So I would say limiting the time is probably the best thing you can do if the concept concerns you, alarms you, brings up thoughts that you can't do it. So meditation, number one, doesn't need to be something that's 20 minutes. It could be 10 deep breaths. If the word is something you associate with something you can't do, what if you went for a walk without your phone? What if you drove home from work without any podcast on in the car, any music or anything? What if you laid in bed and the first moment you open your eyes, you just noticed your body? There's other contexts for meditation that don't have to match that person sitting cross-legged for 20 minutes.
And that's
it's a place, place to start. It's a place to start.
And so what I'm hearing is that finding that silence, because I'll share with you, usually I do take my phone with me. I make a point to not look at anything, but sometimes if a call comes through or if it's the time, I kind of break it out. I break out my walk into segments that, okay, there are friends, sometimes you just don't have time to catch up with. So, that time you kind of catch up with them and then 20-25 minutes is to just commune with nature. So one day it just so happened driving in my car and it says that, oh, we cannot connect your phone. I'm like, what happened? Why it's not connecting? And then it struck me, oh, I don't have my phone with me. So it was my first instinct. It's amazing. Even though I'm an avid meditator for multiple years, and still my first instinct, how our brains are trained, was let me go back and get my phone. And then I said, you know what? This is such a good experiment. I'm just going to go. Yeah. And it was very interesting to see how many times, as I'm walking, it has just become a habit. You just kind of check whether the phone is in your pocket or I don't know what is it called, that the belt or the little pocket thing that you kind of put it on your waist when you're going out with you to put in your phone and your keys and all of that. So that was very interesting. And now I just kind of do it. I do have the phone. I leave it in the car and sometimes I'll take it, but I make a point not to just touch it. And it's amazing how we can train our brain and become comfortable with it.
Yeah, I think, again, as a yoga teacher, I can say silence is probably one of the most powerful spaces for people to be in. From a nervous system standpoint, we're constantly stimulated with so much noise and so much stuff that to simply be in silence is, for so many people, something they very rarely experience. And whether it's by happenstance, like what you describe, or whether it's something that maybe they don't have control over, like they're sitting in a waiting room in a doctor's office, or they come to a yoga class and the teacher's not using music and there's a few minutes before class where the room is quiet, it can have such a profound effect on the nervous system, on the body, simply because it's just so different from what people typically experience.
That is true. And I like what you're saying is that just kind of experimenting, even if it is 1 minute. And sometimes it's so important to have that silence and taking that pause, because that pause can help your brain to reset. And that's a practice that I do myself, like, throughout the day, if I can, at the top of the hour, or like whenever, like, okay, if I'm in the flow, I do it, but then take a break and just kind of unplug. So working on it throughout the day. So tell us, what are the remaining?
Yeah. So number 5, there's 2 more. Number 5 is
just a quick check, like could you kind of check, like, your mic is just having a lot of disturbance.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I haven't changed
now it's
anything. Better. Okay. Is that better? Yeah. So there's 2 more. Number 5 is one of my favorite ones, visualization. When we were little kids, we would dream all the time. Matter of fact, when I can distinctly remember when I was little, I wanted this doll, and I used to go for a walk every day to the candy store, and I used to think really hard in my mind. If I think hard enough, when I go around the corner to the store, the doll's going to be there. Like, I just thought I had this superpower that I could will this item into the 3D. When we grow up, we don't do that anymore. But yet, when we were talking earlier about changing jobs and what we want in our life, starting that as a visualization is a way that we can start to bring that to life and start to materialize what are the steps we need to take. When you watch any world-class athlete, what do they always say when they win the thing? They always say, I saw this in my mind. I saw myself doing this. I mean, there's so many examples, not just athletes, but so many examples of people who excel. And they speak about that in those moments of right after the win or whatever it is. I saw this. So visualization, super important. And then number 6, the last one, is healthy habits. And I know people are just going to think, oh, diet and exercise. And to a certain extent, yes. But there's so many other things we can do throughout our day that allow us to build almost like the infrastructure of someone who is living in a healthy way. And a lot of what we've talked about here, I mean, if we just, and this is speaking for myself, not as giving advice or anything, but just these ideas of movement every day, experimenting, having a mind that's open and curious to self-inquiry, daily meditation or being in silence, visualization, and healthy habits that are meaningful to you, that would build a sense of self-worth, self-value. And with that comes confidence. I am confident as I move through the world because I have created this lattice work of steps that I take, of ways that I operate that allows me to tap into this empowered way of being.
Absolutely. Some very wonderful nuggets over there, Karen. So now there may be a new mom, there may be a busy executive, there may be a busy entrepreneur, and they may say that, Karen and Divya, this is all well and good what you're talking about. But what if I only have 20 minutes time, or not even that much time during every day? What if I'm working 13, 14 hours, or, there are a lot of circumstances when people don't have time. So what would you tell that person?
Yeah.
Like, what infrastructure could they build in that limited time and the constraints?
Yeah. So, you know, even even in our busyness, so even the busy mom, the busy executive, there's an approach to doing that can be infused with a lot of the themes we're talking about here. So, I can even, again, speaking for myself, on days where I have a lot of things going on, I can wake up in the morning and just throw myself at all those things. And by the end of the day, completely collapse. Or I can wake up in the morning, see I have a full schedule, and move through the day in a mindful way that almost in a way prioritizes my energy in service to all the things I need to do. Now, I can certainly say I have done both things. And I definitely, on the days that I do the latter, I get to the end of the day and I feel fulfilled instead of depleted. So that's just from a high level something I can suggest. I mean, mindfulness, we haven't really talked about that in particular, but that is a way of being that infuses all that we do. And it allows us to move through our day without constantly feeling like we're frantic and we're just running out of energy. There's a way to do it, but it's really at its most basic, it's really just awareness, being aware. I think about that busy executive. I was that busy executive at one point. I can sit with my laptop wolfing down my lunch, or I can take 10 minutes, turn off my laptop, and eat my lunch mindfully. Like, that's just one small example. The only other thing I'll say is, even though we're talking about these things and it might sound like it's a lot of time, it's really not a lot of time when you start to build these things into your life. That's how something becomes a lifestyle, not just a habit on its own. So if I wake up in the morning and I do a little meditation or visualization, that takes 2 minutes. And the more I do it, the more it becomes part of my life. So now I'm not looking at things saying, I don't have the time. I'm looking at things and saying, I've integrated these things into my life because that's the kind of person I am. And that's how we shift our identity.
Hmm. So bringing awareness into what you're doing. And when
Mm.
you bring the awareness, then it's not that like, oh, you're passing through the life. What you're doing is in service of others. So for example, you may be, it may be busy that, oh, I don't get to sleep versus I'm blessed. If you're talking about a mom, I'm blessed to have my child and being grateful about the blessings that you have. And similarly, like if you're an executive or if you're a professional or entrepreneur, that at the end of the day, what I'm doing is going to benefit someone. My input could be the output for someone. And then that's being in service really, really hits home.
Yeah. And I mean, there's even science around gratitude and tapping into gratitude and how that affects our cardiovascular system, our endocrine system. And at the same time, I don't want people to hear that and think, I don't even have time to be grateful, or of course I'm grateful that I have a baby. How is this going to help me? So I totally support anything any of us can do to tap into gratitude. And at the same time, I also appreciate that people are stressed, people are tapped out, people are super busy. I do think about moms a lot because I think being a mother, especially if you're a mother that works, but even if you're a mother that stays home, that's a very unique role where you're always putting yourself second or third or fourth, depending on how many kids you have. So it's not just about the rose-colored glass approach, putting on rose-colored glasses and saying, I just need to walk around and be grateful. It really does, though, start with having an honest conversation with yourself about what's missing, what kind of life do I want to lead, what kind of things do I value, and starting with something. I mean, one of the things I talk about a lot with the women that I work with in my program is the magic of momentum. When we start to do something, it could just be one thing, we start to build momentum. And when we build momentum, we feel like we're making progress. And when we feel like we're making progress, we tend to stick with whatever it is we're doing. And that is why it is magic. It just takes that 1 or 2 step process to get started. And pretty soon, we can start to change.
Absolutely. And self-inquiry is the key. That knowing, what you want, and when you're bringing that awareness, it also kind of tells you, like, so one of the stories, like, one of my client moms, like a mom client, or like, she was an executive and she was like, I never get me time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm always putting everybody first and never get me time. So then, as you started out, like, talking about values, when we talked about values, right there on the top of the list were her kids and her husband and her work. So then it was when she aligned with her values, she was able to see that the time she was spending with them was her me time. It's and that's the definition, like, like you were talking about the rose-colored glasses. It's about being very clear, having that clarity, that bringing that awareness, that me time just doesn't have to be like, 2 hours spent by myself. It can be in the moment, when you are in that moment and when you're experiencing life. To me, that's the best gratitude that you can have, because you're not passing through life. You're living your life.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, similarly, I've worked with women who want to enroll in my program, and then they'll say, oh, but I can't spend the money on myself because I could otherwise be doing something for my kids. And so while, yes, I see that, I also ask them, well, if you were to do this thing, how would that help you in some way be better for your kids? And for a lot of these women, the fact that they haven't really invested in themselves from a time or some other perspective for a long time, to think about doing that actually helps them realize that it would make them better for their family, because now they're feeding a part of them that maybe hasn't been tended to for a long time.
Absolutely, because now it's building them up. And it goes back to, I think, so one of those Zen stories, that when your cup is full, then you can pour for somebody else. But if your cup is empty, you can pour from it. So investing in oneself is such a powerful thing. And that goes back again to finding your values and finding even that 20, 25 minutes of time, or even 15 minutes of your time. And then once you get started, you have the momentum. So how can people connect with you? Where can they reach you?
Yeah. So my website is barebonesyoga.com, just like it sounds, BARE, bonesyoga.com. I'm on both TikTok and Instagram, same thing, and Bare Bones Yoga. And I do have a podcast. And of course, most of my content is directed towards yoga teachers. So if someone is watching, listening, that is a yoga teacher, you're going to find a lot there for you. And at the same time, a lot of what I share is about mindset and confidence and personal development. So there's always content there as well for people who are not yoga teachers.
Would you like to share any last thoughts with our audience?
I guess the final thing I would say is to believe in yourself really starts on the inside and has nothing to do with anything you're seeing or comparing yourself to anybody else. And that we all have such amazing potential, and tapping into it really is our birthright, is to be out there in the world in as bold and as confident a way as we can be. That is, you don't need anybody's permission to do that. That is 100% absolutely what you were born to do.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you everyone for joining. And thank you, Juan, for making the show technically possible. Be well.
Thank you.
Until next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who've experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.